Hello, I'm Adrian, and today we're taking an in-depth look at Batman's fighting style in the Arkham games. Batman is without a doubt one of the best hand-to-hand fighters in the entire DC Comics universe. There are a few other characters who equal his skills, but today I'm going to be focusing on the Batman seen in the four main Arkham games, and those are Batman Arkham Asylum, Batman Arkham City, Batman Arkham Origins, and Batman Arkham Knight. I've already made a video analyzing just how many fighting styles the DC Extended Universe version of Batman knows, and you're welcome to check it out either before or after this video. I'll reiterate that according to the comics, Batman is familiar with every single martial art in existence, but today's video will focus purely on the gameplay and theatrical trailers of the games released by the developers to determine just how many this version of Batman knows by extrapolating techniques that are particular to certain fighting styles. Just like his other incarnation, this particular Batman is fond of throwing good old uppercuts, crosses, and hooks, each cornerstone techniques from boxing. Boxing is fantastic when it comes to pure punching because it's one of the best martial arts that is exclusively focused on drawing the most power out of every single punch. The way boxers do this is by constantly torquing in order to bring more force to their strikes. They also employ the tried and true technique of twisting your wrist on your way to the target to add that extra strength. In Batman's case, he is no stranger to punching the lights out of his enemies and employs a myriad of boxing punches, whether it be a right cross or a left cross, or any of his excellent hooks. Several of his punches are enough to send the enemy careening into unconsciousness. What makes this Batman quite unique in his fighting style is how he effortlessly incorporates several elements of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Jiu-Jitsu is all about ground control and locking your opponent in positions where he is rendered immobile. It's not about matching his punches with other punches or kicks, it's simply about finding the best way to wrap yourself around his weakest joints, such as the ankle, the elbow, the knee, etc., and forcing him to submit. In Batman's case, he readily will take a fight to the floor and employs a series of techniques to get his enemy there. Once the enemy is downed, he will proceed to lock his enemy's legs or arms in a series of joint locks designed to render him completely useless in a fight. I have no doubt that many of these moves would leave crippling damage if applied to someone. However, although in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu the opponents remain locked in combat on the floor, Batman knows that if he would stay too long on the floor, he would be overwhelmed by other thugs trying to get the drop on him, so he routinely quickly gets back up to continue the fight with other standing martial arts. And one of those standing martial arts is Muay Thai. Muay Thai is a martial art which favors brutal close quarters techniques. Elbows and knees are absolutely critical to Muay Thai. They are part of what is known as the art of 8 limbs, since you also use them in your fighting arsenal besides your traditional punches and kicks. Elbows and knees are best suited for close quarters attacks as you don't need to extend your whole arm or leg. Throughout the different games and trailers, Batman uses several elbows and knees on his enemies, and usually to great effect. Whether they be flying knees, regular knees, or reverse elbows, he is constantly employing these strikes. What makes his use of Muay Thai particularly effective is just how well he uses his gauntlets to block hits. Notice how he typically uses his gauntlets to quickly counterattack when he gets the chance. And speaking of countering, that brings us to the martial art of Judo, which features extremely efficient techniques for manipulating the body in order to deflect hits, effectively using your opponent's force against them. Given Batman's extreme strength, he's able to effortlessly flip his enemies over him and then apply a subsequent lock, or simply throw them across the room if necessary. In the games, Batman is constantly under a barrage of hits. It thus behooves him to constantly be moving in between targets and throwing them around if need be. And here's where we're going to get into ninjutsu. Last time on Batman's How Many Fighting Styles, I noted how Batman is very skilled in the art of being a ninja, or in other words, ninjutsu. In order to not complicate things further, I left it at that. But as you guys have undoubtedly learned if you've watched the other videos in my series, is that ninjutsu is actually an umbrella term martial art, meaning that it comprises a host of different styles. According to Bujinkan members, the 18 disciplines that comprise ninjutsu were first started in the scrolls of Taga Kureyu and became definitive for all ninjutsu schools, and plenty of those 18 skills form their very own set of umbrellas. I know, it gets a little overwhelming when you think about it. The list of skills ranges from physical ones, such as being able to use a sword, to those in the mind, such as Boryaku, which means being able to use unorthodox strategies and tactics. But for purposes of this video, we'll focus on the physical ones as we're counting fighting styles. And although the mind is just as important as the body in the battlefield, we'll save the philosophy of fighting for another video. We'll begin with Bojutsu. These are stick and staff techniques that are actually readily displayed in his fight against Deathstroke. Considering that Batman can easily read and counter Deathstroke's moves, this denotes an utmost familiarity with his movements. And if that's not enough, taking into account that Robin in this series is an expert with the bow staff, and Batman taught Robin everything he knows, he therefore knows Bojutsu. He also frequently waves a baseball bat around with considerable skill, putting a quite literal spin to his name, Batman. And I'm making a small interjection in this breakdown of ninjutsu here, but since Nightwing primarily demonstrates great skill in Kali and Batman taught Nightwing, Batman therefore knows Kali as well. Kali is a Filipino martial art that emphasizes weapon-based fighting with sticks, blades, and various other weapons. In the case of Nightwing, you can see him fighting with two small batons, each one known as a baston in Kali. They're useful for extending your reach in order to better strike your opponent and are great for blocking. Returning to ninjutsu, next up is Taijutsu, a Japanese blanket term for unarmed combat. It literally means body technique or body skill. Naruto fans may also recognize this term as it is frequently used in the show. Considering Batman employs a plethora of punches, kicks, and throws, it's a no-brainer that he is skilled in empty-handed combat. Shuriken Jutsu is the art of throwing blades and other small weapons, such as the legendary shurikens seen in every ninja movie ever. And what is Batman's signature weapon? The Batarang, his very own branded shuriken, which he uses to distract and quickly attack his enemies. We also have Inton Jutsu, which refers to the art of escaping and concealment. In other words, this is the famous disappearing technique that ninjas are famous for. That one moment they're there, and in the next, they're gone. Just like Batman. Inton Jutsu also goes hand in hand with Kyaku Jutsu, which literally means the art of gunpowder. And this doesn't just mean Batman is capable of using firearms, which he demonstrates knowledge of through the use of his gadgets. It more means the use of it in a pyrotechnical way, or using materials that are capable of undergoing self-contained exothermical chemical reactions for the production of, among other things, smoke. Batman very frequently employs the use of these smoke bombs to disorient and confuse his enemies. Lastly, we have Batman's bread and butter technique when he needs to go up against a multitude of armed enemies and fighting them directly is not an option. And that is the use of Shinobi Iri, which means the art of stealth and infiltration. Now you know why that second game was called Shinobi. Every single stealth sequence in the game is Shinobi Iri, and an explosive version of it is when Batman can readily track his enemies and take them all out without them even realizing he was there. So for purposes of this video, instead of saying Batman knows ninjutsu, we'll go along with Batman knows these 6 distinct fighting styles which comprise ninjutsu. But Batman, like many of the other heroes on Fight Scene Breakdown, knows that sometimes you just need more striking power than your arms, and that's when you rely on kicking. Kicking is an element of several martial arts, but without a doubt the martial art which primarily focuses on kicking is the Korean martial art Taekwondo. At several points, Bruce demonstrates techniques from this martial art, including the famous push kick, the jump spin hook kick, the front kick, the roundhouse kick, the spinning hook kick, the tornado kick, the jump in side kick, and many other variations of kicks. In short, Batman is very much a kicker in this game, and with good reason. They are fantastic for keeping enemies at bay as well as putting one out of commission immediately if a critical shot is landed. However, when you are kicking, you're risking yourself in being counterattacked in several ways as you're holding up your entire body on one leg, a fact that can easily be exploited by a well-trained martial artist, like Batman. In this case, he routinely counters kicks with techniques seen in Hapkido. Hapkido is a very eclectic Korean martial art that shares many similarities to Taekwondo, but has techniques from other martial arts including joint locks and throws to make it a more well-rounded fighting style. It's particularly useful in countering kicks as it builds off a martial art that is mostly based on kicking, Taekwondo. In Batman's case, not only does he routinely counter kicks with techniques seen in this martial art, he also carries over a bit of its more theatrical techniques when countering this punch by making this guy auto-punch himself. However, it should be noted this move is more routinely used to counter someone stabbing you. Speaking of countering attacks with weapons, Batman is also extremely well versed in disarming techniques, and for the most comprehensive and effective disarming techniques, your best bet is to turn to Krav Maga. Krav Maga's goal is to utterly overpower your assailant with quick and brutal techniques which are usually illegal in other martial arts, as they frequently emphasize striking the enemy in the weakest areas, such as the groin or the throat. In Batman's case, he will readily target those areas without hesitation, and can disarm bad guys holding every sort of weapon imaginable. Bats, pistols, you name it, he can disarm it. Another reason why I lean towards Batman knowing Krav Maga is that he applies an important principle behind it. Take this guy for instance. He takes control of the man's handgun by grabbing it before he has a chance to lift it and slams him into the vehicle with a perfectly executed elbow strike. Both are practically simultaneous, a philosophy which is ingrained in Krav Maga, where you want to always be attacking as you are defending. What's more, that movement of immediately moving to attack without a moment's hesitation is known as bursting within this fighting style. A particular move this Batman employs is a telltale sign of his familiarity with Bruce Lee's martial art Jeet Kune Do. Bruce Lee created Jeet Kune Do by taking elements of what he liked from his training in Wing Chun and mixing it with other fighting styles. Above all else, he wanted to create a style that was incredibly fast and very direct. Jeet Kune Do literally means the way of the intercepting fist, and something very particular to this style is that unlike other martial arts, where a punch comes in and you block and then counterattack, in Jeet Kune Do, you instead counterattack the punch with a quicker punch of your own, hence the name intercepting the fist. And this philosophy also applies to kicking, where you can counter a kick with a well-placed kick of your own. In a blink and you miss it moment from one of the trailers, Batman does just that. He denies his kick by launching a kick of his own as a counterattack. It goes without saying that if Batman is familiar with Jeet Kune Do, he must be familiar with the martial art that inspired it, Wing Chun Kung Fu. As it was explored in Ip Man's fight scene breakdown, Wing Chun really shines when countering standard punches with its concept of trapping. Notice how Donnie Yen curls his fingers around the blocked hit and holds it as he continues his barrage of attacks? That act of momentarily immobilizing an opponent's limbs to give you a brief opportunity to strike while he cannot is called trapping. Batman uses this concept several times on his foes in the Arkham games. When they attack, they are basically asking themselves for Batman to speedily trap them and counterattack with whichever technique he feels like doing at the time. Although we've already covered his punching basics, I feel I do need to point out that this Batman, like his DC EU counterpart, is also familiar with karate, not only because of his use of the side elbow, a technique more traditionally associated with karate than Muay Thai, but because of how he throws this punch right here. In karate, you are taught to not only twist your upper body when you're punching and bring back your other arm, but to also position your legs in the exact same manner he is doing, with one knee bent and the other leg extending backward. The open palm strike is also seen in several other martial arts, but it's most commonly associated with karate. Moving on to Batman's theatrical side, he is fond of incorporating parkour and pro wrestling techniques. The reason I say this is primarily because of how he moves across a battlefield. Notice how he is constantly in motion, somersaulting over his enemies or rolling to the next man, or even performing a wall run to avoid Deathstroke's attacks. These are all concepts seen in the art of free running or parkour. Pro wrestling shows itself when he routinely uses objects to smash his enemies into them, executes drop kicks, clotheslines, puts them into headlocks, or just plain picks them up and throws them across a room. So in conclusion, how many fighting styles does Batman in the Arkham games know? They are boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, Judo, Bojutsu, Taijutsu, Shuriken Jutsu, Inton Jutsu, Kyaku Jutsu, Shinobi Iri, Kali, Taekwondo, Hapkido, Krav Maga, Jeet Kune Do, Wing Chun, Karate, Parkour, and Pro Wrestling, which brings us to the grand total of 19 fighting styles. What other character would you like to see me break down in terms of his fighting style? Let me know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe, and you can follow me on my Twitter, Instagram, and brand new Facebook fan page, Godzilla Rex, to be notified when another new episode premieres. It would also be great if you could join my Patreon to get access to cool behind the scenes stuff and a bunch of other rewards. See you next time.